So to be clear, there's been a lot of discussion over the last few months about whether or not the significant amount of people who own crypto in America, and we have it as 20% of all registered and likely voters have bought crypto, along with other polls. And it's not clear whether or not they will vote on that purchase. So we asked those who bought crypto in the past, do you consider yourself a single issue crypto voter? And I'll read the wording exactly because it matters for polling. Do you consider yourself a single issue crypto voter and that government policy on crypto is the most important policy you consider when selecting a candidate for office? And a quarter of those who bought crypto, 5% of all likely voters, say yes, they are. This was a surprisingly large number in our view, especially given how close this election is. I mean, we're looking at 1% margins in all the key states.
How about when it comes down to Trump versus Harris? Both have tried to seize on this. We could probably argue Donald Trump a little more aggressively, even getting into the family business to some extent. But Harris has tried to make clear her openness to new ideas, to enhancing growth in crypto. But the industry seems to favor Trump. What did you learn?
It was surprising because we're looking not at the industry but at voters. And among crypto purchasers, it's tied 47-47. This is better for Trump than in the overall ballot, which we have as 48-46. But Harris has improved dramatically from where Biden was in March. When we asked this question in March, asking who do you favor, Biden or Trump, 48% of crypto purchasers favored Trump, only 39% favored Biden, even though this was a population that voted more for Biden than Trump in 2020.
Well, favoring is one thing, trusting is another. And I did notice in your data, Republicans and Donald Trump are trusted more to promote the kind of growth and regulatory nature of the crypto environment moving forward.
Exactly right. And that also is a change from March. In March, it was tied. 25% said Republicans were better. 25% said Democrats. But now in the wake of obviously a lot of statements, Donald Trump said he wanted a Bitcoin sovereign wealth fund. He's doing a DeFi protocol. 30% of voters say they trust Republicans more on crypto policy. Only 25% trust Democrats more. But this is still a jump ball. Independents are much more mixed at about 10% trusting each side. So there's ways to come back.
We just heard from Wiley Nickel, who has embraced crypto in a way that a lot of lawmakers have not. But he has a vision, as he's told us, even beyond his tenure in the House, of lawmakers finding some critical mass here, finding common ground, maybe mainstreaming of crypto with so many lawmakers kind of catching up to the narrative here. Do you see that in the next term, regardless of who the president is?
I actually do, because we also asked all voters, do you consider that crypto will be a major part of the economy going forward or a passing fad? And 46% of all likely voters said they consider it a major part of the economy, along with 47% of independent voters. And remember, only 20% of voters have bought crypto. So a lot of people who haven't even bought into it yet see it as a major part of the economy. And obviously, as Congressman Nickel would tell you, elected officials and policymakers follow the voters. The voters in a democracy are always our North Star.
So no matter who ultimately wins, not the presidency, but majorities in the House and Senate, do you think actual crypto market structure legislation delineating SEC CFTC authority will pass in the next Congress?
I definitely think it'll be considered. The $64,000 question in D.C., of course, whether it'll pass. It should pass. I would think there's a desire for it to pass. But it does seem like we finally have an appreciation in a lot of D.C. that this is here to stay and this needs to be well regulated. And ultimately, right, that is what both candidates are saying. They want America to dominate the blockchain, in the words of Kamala Harris, to control Bitcoin, in the words of Donald Trump. So there is a consensus, I think, burgeoning that we need to be getting up to speed with other countries on crypto.
So we don't necessarily need a Republican Congress to make that happen?
I don't think we do. It's worth noting, right, that I think no matter what, it's likely you could see gridlock or something akin to it. We have a Republican House this Congress, of course, and it often had issues governing itself. This is a topic, to Congressman Nichols' point, 71 Democrats voted for FIT 21, which is a high amount. You could see a bipartisan Rose Garden signing ceremony for crypto legislation, which is not something you can say about most topics next year.
Well, and it does remind us that legislation is what ultimately could change a lot of things for the industry. But the way the president could change things, aside from expressing openness, is appointing regulators, right, at the CFTC and the SEC. Obviously, we can assume with Donald Trump that's going to look a lot different. What about with Kamala Harris?
It's an open question. It's definitely the case that the president has a lot of power to move around commissioners at any time, right? A chairman serves the pleasure of the president. She could say she wants to name a current acting commissioner the chair. She could nominate someone else as commissioner and name that person chair. But in general, right, I think part of how we got here is the Biden admin has been, shall we say, sclerotic, shambolic in terms of its approach to crypto. There is no one central guiding star, and I saw that in person in 21 when I was at the SEC. If you have a President Harris coming in saying, I want to finally have the government sing from one songbook, that should unlock a lot of potential policymaking and hopefully some clarity.
What will be the residue of this campaign when it comes to the influence of crypto, not just on the presidential level, but some of the Senate races like in Ohio, like in Massachusetts, where we've seen self-funded candidates come out of nowhere and actually make a dent?
I think it definitely shows this issue matters. I think that's the number one thing that was surprising to people in D.C. If you talk to them in early 23, when you said this is going to be a major issue because so many people buy crypto, they said, what are you talking about? Come on, that's not true. And you have to point polling to them, and they still don't really get it. One thing we've seen in our polling that's very notable is that ownership is highest among people who are young, people who are male, people who are non-white, but it's lowest among people who are older, who are white and have post-grad degrees. So in many ways, ownership is disproportionately low among the exact staffing group that exists in Washington, D.C., and that, I think, has caused the blind spot on this topic that does not exist in New York or San Francisco.
But when Joe is asking about the kind of money that has come into some of these races, Fair Shake, for example, there are now crypto PACs with tens of millions of dollars that they've put into this race. Do you expect that kind of money dispensing will exist from this industry in cycles moving forward?
I think the evidence is that crypto is saying it's here to stay and be a player going forward. Obviously, what that means in any given cycle is unclear, but it seems unlikely to expect that crypto will simply walk away. That said, legislation changes everything. You can imagine, things changing as part of a market structure bill. And I think that is, in fact, one of the key questions is what does this industry look like when it is fully part of a well-regulated, clear system where the regulator is working with the industry on behalf of consumers and investors and not against it.
We were just talking earlier with Abigail about what the markets might do in some of the uncertainty that could follow the election next week. Do you expect a wild ride for Bitcoin, for other coins, starting Wednesday morning?
That is so far above my pay grade. And if I knew that, I'd be in a different job. I think what I've learned, so I've been following elections professionally and as an amateur for basically 25 years. There's never been an election where I'm more uncertain of the outcome than this one.
How about that?
It's not just close. It's that the error bars are so wide. It's potentially the case there's a lot of hurting going on. Nate Silver was talking about that. So for me, I'm just trying to gird myself for the unknowable, the known unknowns, as it were, in Rumsfeldian talk.
Yeah.